suppose it was inevitable that I would eventually talk about Potterheads. The millennials are being cringe again. Potterheads from across the country have been sharing their trips to Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights and their experiences with the masked Death Eater performers. That's not necessarily all that embarrassing. What is embarrassing and potentially problematic is when they get backed up against a wall and have a wand sensually pointed in their face. That is not a euphemism. Maybe it is. Honestly, I don't know at this point, because that is literally what is happening, and it's sexually arousing a certain type of Harry Potter fan. To be more specific, Booktok Potterheads with a mask fetish. There seems to be 3 distinct groups who have all merged into one horny Voltron of cringe. And if none of what I've just said made any sense, I'm not having a stroke, and I will explain. But basically, what is happening is people on TikTok have been losing their minds over the Death Eaters returning to Harry Potter Land and are posting thirst traps and fan cams and then swooning over said videos of the performers that all use the same goddamn song for some reason. I was unfortunately made aware of the trend and the existence of the Halloween Horror Nights performers a couple of weeks ago thanks to TikTok's cursed algorithm, and I swear I'm not going out of my way to find this stuff. I'm just a magnet for it, I guess. Which might mean that I'm the problem. This fucking car, man. Fix your muffler. The Death Eaters first debuted in 2022, where they worked the park for 3 months between September and November, lurking in the shadows, sneaking up on people, and wandering the parking lot in broad daylight next to a couple of trash cans. Very spooky. Every theme park now offers a more immersive experience for attendees, and in the case of Harry Potter Land, the Death Eater performers are there to heighten the realism for guests as a way to make the $150 non-refundable tickets seem worth it. Now there's a fucking street cleaner. Can you hear that? You don't just go on rides at theme parks anymore. You become part of the story, which does absolutely nothing to curb main character syndrome for the terminally online TikTok user. Immersion is the latest buzzword being pitched to consumers to sell more tickets for something experiential that often falls short of what was promised. Or includes bearing witness to kink enthusiasts without your consent. This isn't what I meant by more immersive. The immersive experience at Potterland is the addition of roaming gangs of theater kids working seasonal jobs dressed up as evil wizards. They're like Disneyland cast members, but not fun or approachable. You might see them cast a spell that creates a massive fireball and scares the shit out of a family from Idaho, or conjure a sad green fart cloud that's not fooling anyone as to how the trick works. They also put on some kind of show that's not really dancing and not like the staged Star Wars battles that you might see at the Disney parks that seem actually entertaining. It's more like interpretive speed walking mixed with some sinister finger tutting, where their finishing move is to pose really hard, like if Alexander McQueen put on a magic fashion show. In general, the Death Eaters just slink about Diagon Alley, pointing at people. And this is what has turned on an entire sub-community of Booktok Potterheads. But what the hell is Booktok, and why am I talking about it in a video titled something to do with Harry Potter Death Eaters? I'm talking about it because there are a couple of internet communities all converging in one place at the Harry Potter family theme park. I'm sure some of my viewers are probably familiar with Booktok, even just tangentially, but for those who may be confused and worried I'm having a psychotic episode, there is a certain demographic of people, mostly women, who get really turned on by stories about abusive men bossing women around in what are essentially light BDSM and rape fantasies. They sometimes also enjoy POV TikTok videos of masked men kidnapping women, or that totally relatable attraction to the Punisher hunting you down in the woods like you're the most dangerous game. That's Mask Talk, but again, they overlap with Booktok fans, and both have gotten a fair amount of criticism over the years for promoting abusive relationships and peddling erotic smut novels while calling it dark romance or literature for people with unresolved trauma. Not all Booktok content is an excuse to sell or promote erotic romance novels, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that kind of writing or having these kinds of turn-ons. But the community originally started as a place for people to share their favorite books and discuss lesser-known authors, and sometimes fan fiction, and now every time someone mentions Booktok, they risk being called a sex pest because of its association with graphic erotic fiction. Every now and again, Booktok enters public discourse to the dismay of everyone on the internet. Last year, the title pages of 2 novels, not porn, don't call it that, went viral, which I will not read aloud for fear this video will get demonetized, if it hasn't already. The poster of the first tweet said, "I'd burn this book," in response to bearing witness to some of the most disgusting string of words ever to be printed and bound. The fuck was that? The other photo that was tweeted, which was of a dedication page by the way, was posted with the caption, "Christ alive," to being psychically violated by a sentence that should be a sex crime. Listen, I don't want to sound like an anti-porn Puritan, but let's call a spade a spade. You're reading porn, and that's fine. And if you're on Mass Talk, you're watching porn, which is also okay. Just don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining. From what I can tell, many of the characters in these erotic romance novels that Booktok passes around feature dark, sinister characters who commit what would be considered a crime in the real world that, to me, sound more like witness testimony from a police report than an excerpt from a steamy novel. It truly seems that Booktok and Mask Talk have combined their manifestation powers and brought these fantasies into a reality in the strangest and least appropriate place possible, a corporate-owned children's theme park that I can only assume is meant for Midwestern families on vacation. Just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with, I found a list of the top 20 spiciest Booktok books and compiled the themes contained within. Of the 20 books, 7 included violence, 7 murder, 5 had some depiction of sexual assault, 5 included kidnapping, 3 had rape, and 3 stalking. Other themes were incest, pregnancy, revenge porn, and infidelity. Keep in mind, these are spicy books meant to arouse the reader, not horror novels that would give Stephen King sexually abusive nightmares. These authors at least know how to write a satisfying ending. Some of the tropes listed were things like reverse harem, age gap, enemies to lovers, possessive OTTMC, over-the-top male character. These people really love their acronyms, by the way. Taboo, and morally gray alpha hole, which is not what you think. It's a portmanteau of alpha and asshole, not asshole as in anus, a rude person. Not like a butt that owns a Cybertruck and makes inspirational Instagram posts about Bitcoin. Whether or not these characters are cloaked and masked, I'll never know because I'll never read one of these smut novels. And to be fair, I can barely read anything anymore without nodding off after a couple of pages. Maybe one of these books will actually keep me up at night. While I don't think people are necessarily getting turned on simply by the aesthetic of the Death Eaters alone, especially if we're talking about Peter Pettigrew, although I'm sure those people do exist, I think it's much more about what they represent. Sinister men and sometimes women who could overpower and maybe kill you in a sexually aggressive way if they wanted. Again, we're in Fantasyland, and I don't see anything wrong with having taboo kinks as long as it's not hurting anyone and everyone participating are consenting adults. But to indulge in one of these fantasies in a public place where there is no informed consent by the people around you is weird for a couple of reasons. The first being the sexualization of people who are just doing a job. People dressed under all that crap are probably improv students making minimum wage who might even sometimes feel pressured to play along because they need the money even if they're not all that into a stranger initiating a twisted meet cute. You wouldn't go into a Subway and film the employees there because the way they add mayonnaise to your sandwich turns you on. Just because the Death Eaters are wearing masks to hide their faces doesn't mean there isn't a person under there that you're objectifying. And I'm sure the performers themselves enjoy what they do. How could they not? They're theater kids who get to play with wands all day. That is the one big difference between working as a Death Eater and working as a sandwich artist. You can't really phone in a performance as a Death Eater, whereas every Subway employee that has ever helped me couldn't give a fuck about their title as sandwich artist. Whether or not the performers enjoy the objectification or sexual tension of the guests is something else entirely. And if that's the case, it's a little weird to essentially be getting off while you're on the clock. While it's clear cameras are allowed in the parks, there are a lot of people filming the performers for their thirst trap fan cam edits, and I don't think upper management could have predicted that people would be making this kind of content about their employees. I mean, I'm sure they do now and are forced to have meetings where some poor bastard has to explain what Booktok and Mask Talk is to a group of 18 to 24-year-olds. As if they don't already know. In the last couple of weeks, there have been a few specific videos that have gone around. One being this, which looks like it was filmed with the same camera used by ISIS in their beheading videos. And this one featuring a woman who's got her own leaky cauldron, if you know what I mean. But my question is, are all the guests comfortable with these interactions? And do the performers just approach random people? Or do some guests sign a little waiver saying they're okay with being approached and given a wristband that says, "Inspect my Patronus"? So stupid, dude. Or is it like when you go to a comedy show and sit in hot seats where the comedian might interact with you and an usher asks if you're okay with Chris D'Elia making fun of your profession? What safety precautions are in place for when a guest isn't comfortable with being approached by a masked man? These are important questions because I worry there's a bit of a feedback loop happening where some people from Booktok or Mask Talk show up expecting a certain type of experience and then approaching performers who maybe aren't into it, and then some performers who are aware of the trend and come on maybe a bit too strong to people who have no idea such a niche community of horny women even exists. So, is there some sort of signal or phrase guests are told they can use if they want an interaction to end? If not, all this seems like a lawsuit waiting to happen, and I can't imagine a huge corporation like Universal Studios wouldn't protect their ass. Also, what are the Death Eaters saying? Do they talk to you? All I've seen of these interactions is a performer invading someone's personal space and growling on them. Again, this is a theme park billed as being all ages that even says that while Halloween Horror Nights has no age minimum for the event, it's still not recommended to persons under 13. But some people are getting a little too comfortable treating it like a 21 and up sex club, so what the fuck are the rules, man? Because some of these people are actually going out of their way to make something that's essentially a haunted house into a kink training course.
Let's look at some comments. This is the kind of stuff that was concerning me. I would definitely get banned for life. Too comfortable. They know their audience is girls raised on Harry Potter who grew up and got kinky. I just want to go. Just say to one of them, "I'll show you mine if you show me yours." Oh, cute. Doms in training. No! We don't want to think of this as safe. No. What is being said to train them for this role? They probably had to listen to several Booktok books. There's no way they didn't. Gross. So these comments are suggesting that they are learning on sexual material how to interact with people. Study these women on TikTok. Be extremely dominant and seductive. You know what they want. It's not what I want. I had Harry Potter fans, but now you have someone Booktok, and it's not safe for work. There's children there. Physically children there. Baby in a stroller. Literally a child directly behind the Death Eater that she's talking to. A child fully watching it happening. And lastly, this. Which, by the way, this is the kind of interaction I would like to see with the Death Eaters, where it's just a family-friendly thing, because this is a family-friendly location. We're going to start getting some people who are entitled and they want this experience. Nobody's doing anything wrong yet, but somebody is going to go there and they're going to get mad at one of these men for not treating them dirty.
You can't go around commenting this stuff and posting videos of women getting turned on by Harry Potter employees and not expect a few people to be worried about consent and safety. It's not like the concern is coming out of nowhere either. We've seen this kind of behavior in the past with Disney cast members being groped, and eventually someone's gonna go too far and do something even more inappropriate. It just gets a little too close to forcing strangers to participate in your kink against their will or consent. Which brings it to another issue with Booktok bleeding over into real life. This kind of mask talk, Booktok, Death Eater talk content could, intentionally or otherwise, end up promoting the idea the best way to turn a woman on is by backing her up against a wall, or a tree in a field, or into a confined space. I know there will be people who say I'm overreacting, but I'm not the only person who's picked up on how problematic this could potentially be. There have been countless creators talking about this, and the whole thing on the surface does seem silly and innocuous. It's a bunch of people wear masks and cloaks with wands. How do you take that seriously? However, men, especially boys suffering from TikTok brain rot, are stupid and will absolutely end up trying this shit out in real life. The other problem that I sort of mentioned already is people using the immersive Death Eater experience as a way to introduce others, including their own children, to the world of dark romance and kink culture. While I was scrolling through TikTok gathering clips to use for this video, I came upon this video of a mother filming her daughter being approached by a Death Eater who checks to see if they have the dark mark or whatever and then bows to them. It's honestly kind of a sweet moment for this 13 or 14-year-old who is clearly excited about the interaction. The caption reads, "When the Death Eater bows to you, you know you're full of twisted magic." And I can't tell if the mother wrote that or the daughter because it definitely sounds like something a millennial Potterhead parent would say, and also something a preteen would think is edgy. It's a fine line. Initially, I just thought that this was fucking cringe until I checked the comments, and the first thing I saw was this interaction where a random person commented that they think this child just discovered her first kink. The mother obviously responded by rightly condemning the weird sexualization of her daughter. I'm just joking. She confirmed that, and I can't be clear enough about this, her child daughter was into it, and she would be sharing all her smut Booktok books with her in the future. I love a supportive mom. All right, girl boss. Jesus Christ, shut up. This isn't support. This is gross and depraved. You know, it's one thing for a stranger on the internet to be a creep because you can't control what other people think, unfortunately, but for the parent to give it credence and then talk about how they're gonna show them smut basically signals to these people that interactions like this are acceptable. You people are bizarre. Stop encouraging each other and leave literal children out of your fucked up abusive rape fantasies. Go get some butterbeer and chill out. The last thing that makes this whole Booktok Death Eater thing uncomfortable is that Death Eaters are basically an allegory for white supremacists or Nazis, depending on how you look at it. Now, I saw some people respond to these accusations that it's pretty on the nose and kind of lazy writing, similar to stormtroopers and Darth Vader being an allegory for Nazis as well in Star Wars. But J.K. Rowling named the one Asian character in the books Cho Chang and used misspelled Latin phrases for spells, so I'm sorry, but yeah, she is a lazy writer who definitely uses simple story tropes whenever she possibly can, and whether you want to believe it or not, the Death Eaters are Nazis. Their whole thing is pure blood wizard supremacy, for God's sake. In fact, they're probably the worst kinds of Nazis. SS officers. They're Voldemort's inner circle of high-ranking evil wizards, so everyone who's drooling over these characters might as well be lusting after Joseph Goebbels. Honestly, the fact that they're even featured at an all-ages family theme park interacting with toddlers is kinda weird the more you think about it. You can only separate the art from the allegory so much, and going around glorifying or reducing wizard Nazis down to simply being spooky is maybe in bad taste. Being attracted to the bad boy persona or danger in general is not necessarily a problem, but these aren't your typical bad boys. They're magic Nazis who murder old men and children. You could chalk it up to some of these booktalkers having a harmless kink or some kind of paraphilia, but I want to be careful and not generalize an entire group of people as being all stricken with hybristophilia, the phenomenon of an individual being sexually aroused by a criminal offender. Extreme examples of this are prison groupies and serial killer fans who go on to marry people like Richard Ramirez and Father Ted Bundy's children because they think, I can change him. So it is a very real and relatively common thing, and sometimes is referred to as Bonnie and Clyde syndrome. It's also not something that affects only women either. I want to make that very clear. Men are just as into strong, dangerous, fictional women as well. Remember the Mommy Dimitrescu memes? One of the reasons it might seem like there are more women who are attracted to these kinds of archetypes and making so much Death Eater erotica is because, one, women in general are more likely to publicly express emotional or sexual attraction than men, and two, most perpetrators of violence are statistically men. There simply aren't as many serial killers that are women, or women who commit sexual violence, out there for men to develop weird parasocial relationships with. But I mean, even Eileen Wuornos was getting marriage proposals from male suitors, so... The Death Eater thirst trap trend is much more tame, to be fair, and I'm simply trying to make the point that anyone of any gender can have an attraction to individuals based on their perceived danger or threatening nature. The fact that this behavior is beginning to take place at a family-friendly theme park is what's particularly unsettling when there are safe spaces that exist for people who want to explore their sexuality in this way. There are kink communities everywhere where you can learn how to safely participate in these activities. And maybe the people going to Harry Potter Land are in the early stages of discovering their kinkier side, or don't know that it even is a kink, or that those communities exist. But it also kind of feels like people are using the excuse that, what, it's part of the show, as justification to behave in a semi-sexually aggressive way. It's a weirdly indirect version of going, what, they're asking for it, as if these performers signed up to be sexualized. The innocence of attending an immersive experience is lost when people start filming and posting themselves or others going into heat on the internet over someone in a spooky mask. I mean, it could also be about the voyeuristic nature of acting out a taboo fantasy in public, which is not any better. It might actually be worse. Thankfully, the Death Eaters only come out a couple of months a year, but either way, stop it, stop doing this. Go rub one out on Mask Talk or read one of your dark romance novels in the privacy of your own home instead. There are children present. That's the video. Thanks so much for sticking around. If you made it this far, that means you're special. Now, you unfortunately have to follow the rules of the channel, which are you gotta like, you gotta comment, you gotta share, and you gotta subscribe. 80+% of my viewers are not subscribed, and it would make me feel good if you did that. No other updates really. I'm working on multiple scripts sort of all at once. Hopefully I can get one out sooner than I got this one out. I know it was like 2 weeks between releases. But we'll see. Life's crazy and busy for me right now, so check out the community section. Go follow me on Instagram, where I give updates about the channel and memes, basically. Okay, thanks. Until next time, vanish.